So we are on. Okay, good morning, everyone. And now we got it started. And this morning we have Sharon Kwok. She's in Hong Kong, and now
I'm finally online.
Alex Rose in Chicago again. I'm in Sydney, Australia.
Yep.
So I gotta do this first before you, Alex, again.
Okay, fine. Go ahead.
Now I met Sharon way back in 2011, I believe, was at the Ocean Geographic Unforgettable Evening event in Hong Kong with Silver O, David Dubélé, and Jennifer Hayes. I call Sharon. Sharon is actually an actress, and an activist, and an artist. And someone told me she's really the Joan of Arc of the ocean.
I like that. I like that.
The new one.
And in my mind, she's also an agent, a secret agent of sort.
That might be more accurate.
For the environment, because
the more you talk about it, the more unsecret I'd be.
Sorry about that.
I remember Sharon well because it was during our time in Hong Kong when she took us to some back street in Hong Kong where everybody sell all the dry food, and she got us into this warehouse, a secret warehouse with lots of shark fins.
Oh.
I don't know how she brought us got in there with Jennifer and Dave, I remember. And there was huge pile of shark fins. And this bag of shark fin was in the back that it was actually shipped in from Brazil somewhere.
Wow.
And then inside this cold room, there was this lots of huge fins. And then suddenly the man who let us in got a call. And the call was from probably his boss or the mafia.
Yes, it was from his boss's wife, actually.
Yeah, in San Francisco somewhere. So here we're in Hong Kong. Yeah. Someone is actually watching us. The warehouse in San Francisco.
They had cameras.
They said, get them out.
That old guy actually lost his job.
Really?
Really?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, he did. He lost his job, but he moved on to, I think, a better one. He's very old. That bloke, when we saw him that time, he would have been in his late 70s, and he actually swum to Hong Kong from China in his youth. He told me he did the swim, which was not a very hard swim, but he did it across the river when he was about 16 years old. And because he wasn't very well educated, he spent his whole life dealing with seafood.
Wow.
So he actually knows a lot about Hong Kong's seafood industry. He was here in its heydays during the 70s. He saw species disappear. I'd spend hours with him. I'd wine and dine him. He loves cigarettes. He's the only person I bought cigarettes for. And well, when you're that old, I guess it doesn't really matter.
Right. You made it that long, just
and
whatever.
He's immune to it, I guess, yeah. And anyways, he would describe species, and I would sit there sketching it, because some of these weren't even documented, and they'd be gone already.
Wow.
Yeah, so he
thing.
retired to another better paying job in Costa Rica after that.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
That's good. So here we are, everyone. Sharon Kwok, secret agent for the environment. Off you go, Alex.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Now you have to listen to the official bio of yourself, read by me. Yes, it's very exciting. Yeah. This is the time where if you need to get a drink, you go do that, and then I'll be back. I'm just kidding. All right. So for anyone who doesn't know Sharon, she's an actress, artist, and conservationist. She's Eurasian born in Hong Kong and grew up in San Francisco. As a fine arts artist, Sharon taught art as well as held her first exhibition at age 17. Adept at many mediums, she still enjoys designing endangered species-themed jewelry or sculpting them when time permits. As an actress, she's been featured in over a dozen movies and all of Hong Kong TV stations, as well as some abroad. A marine conservation-themed documentary series that she co-hosted and produced was extremely popular in Hong Kong and has inspired many in the region to get into diving. Today, Sharon has completely devoted herself to conservation work and founded Aqua Meridian Conservation and Education to contribute to the preservation of biodiversity in China and other parts of Asia where simple changes in traditions, such as consumers' views of wildlife products or responsible consideration of natural resources, would have critical impacts. Going forward, she hopes to scale up her public reach via China's television and social media platforms in order to maximize conservation education. So if you couldn't gather from all of that, Sharon does absolutely everything, and we're really happy to have her with us this evening. So thanks for making it work.
I'm speechless.
Oh,
Actually, I found yesterday on YouTube a movie that Sharon acted in. It's called, what is it called? Something to do with fists. Do you remember that, Sharon?
I've done.
I think it's called Red Fist. Red Fist.
I did a lot of martial arts movies actually, because my family, my mother did martial arts, I do martial arts, my son does martial arts, and it's fun. But I kind of fell into the whole acting thing quite by accident, and I've enjoyed it. I started when I was quite young, but people have sent me links of my old films, which I actually have never seen myself. And there was one that I just couldn't stop laughing over because it was like 15 minutes of complete, utter chaos and violence. There was nothing verbal about it. There was really hardly any acting. It was just, myself and another girl were in this house. We're undercover cops, I think, and we went into this mansion and we were killing bad guys, really. So,
Wow. See, that was her secret agent training coming out, Michael.
That's right. Exactly. So,
love it.
Sharon, I'm going to, we have your presentation ready. Shall I share the screen right now?
Sure.
Okay, and then we can take it away on
All
this
right.
one. Yeah.
Let's see what you've got, Michael.
Yeah. Sharon. Let's see. Okay, here we go.
I'm wondering where I look at to find the others that are online.
Yeah, you can see them online. Hang on. Okay. Have you seen my screen, Aaron?
Yes.
You are?
Now on your screen.
Okay. I shall put on.
Yeah, just go into the
PowerPoint from the beginning.
Yep.
All right. Away you go, Sharon. All right. Here's the first picture. You can tell us stories of all your pictures. There you go.
Oh, I love this.
Okay, well, that picture, my mom dolled me up. I was modeling for one of Hong Kong's brands, I think. So it was one of those outfits. This would have been late 70s. I'm dating myself, and I really don't mind. There's a cockatoo on my shoulder. I remember his name was Big Boy. And this was done in Ocean Park, where, well, my father was one of the founding members at Ocean Park. So I kind of grew up there. And I think this place had a lot to do with what I am, how I am today. My brother and I, we would go down to the park every day as soon as our homework was done, or sometimes even before it's done. We'd just sneak down and we'd spend a lot of our time there. However, my brother and I did have a bit of a difference. We viewed wildlife slightly differently. I would spend hours, for example, following an insect or say an ant, and then following it to the hole where it came out of and watch the whole trail of them, maybe putting some food out, seeing how they'd act, just studying wildlife. And I realized that, you guys are the same. So my whole life, I haven't been able to find other naturalists until I got into conservation work. And it was very refreshing that, I recall going places with Sylvia, for example, and we could just be walking down a path and I would see a frog or something and we'd all stop and study it and take pictures. And so I think I finally found my crowd.
That's good. Michael, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I
see you're talking.
Well, I can fill in the silence actually with a bit more about Ocean Park actually, because when I was little there, I remember that's where I learned how to swim in Ocean Park, because my father, being German American, he had his ideas about how to teach kids do certain things, and he decided that a child should learn how to swim by simply throwing them into the deep end, which he did. And then my mother promptly freaked out, being a very traditional Chinese tiger mom. She freaked out and called the lifeguard, and I think this happened when I was about 2. So consequently, I had been afraid of the water, never learned how to swim until I was about 6 at Ocean Park. And I remember that fateful day when I was just sitting on the ledge with some dolphins in the pool, and there was nobody else around because my brother and I, we'd sneak behind the scenes all the time. And this is where they kept the dolphins when they weren't busy doing shows and stuff. And I fell into the pool. And there was no ladder, no way of getting out, but dolphins wouldn't let a child drown. So that's how I learned how to swim. And consequently, till today, I'm still not very good swimmer at the surface, but I love being under.
All right. So
wow.
What's this one? Tell us, Sharon.
Okay, this photo, this would have been a few years back at one of Hong Kong's Ivory seizures by the immigration department. And as you can see, now I forgot exactly how many tons it was that one time, but what I found remarkable about this particular seizure is if you look in front of me, you'll see various tusks. They were shipped into Hong Kong disguised as wood material to be made into furniture. But actually, if you open the whole cargo, the first pieces of wood, they were logs that were sort of squared up. They were standing straight. But if you remove the first row of logs, further in, you would spot more logs, of course, that looked slightly off. There was a panel, you take them out, there were actually boxes. And these tusks were hidden inside these, actually, they looked like little caskets that were pretending to be squared logs. Some of these were already worked pieces of ivory. You see the shiny white bits in the middle, those were already worked. The ones on the left in front of me, you'll see that they're quite dirty and dark. These basically had been just pulled straight out of the elephants. They have not been worked. You see the hole at the base of the tusk, and that's actually within the skull. So if you look at those darker tusks, you'll see that there's a lighter section. So the lighter section is inside the skull, and the hole would be, well, it would be part of the animal's inside the skull. And when people take the ivory, they want all of it. So therefore, of course, there's no such thing as just sawing off the tusk and letting the ivory live free, because they want all of it. It's all about money. And this is from poaching. So people need to do it within a very short amount of time. It's illegal work. And the people that deal with ivory poaching a lot of the times also deal in arms and human trafficking, along with wildlife, illegal wildlife trade. So it's very nasty business. But one more thing worth mentioning is if you really look at that picture, those small tusks, they're from extremely young elephants. Now, I actually have a background of my mother who had a shop in San Francisco, Chinatown, a jewelry shop. And when I first came back to Hong Kong to work in my late teens, well, mid-late teens, she had asked me to help her source jewelry and materials such as precious stones, semi-precious stones. Ivory was among this. And I knew the families in Hong Kong that dealt with the ivory trade. There's basically 5 families really, but they were enough to make Hong Kong the hub of the ivory trade globally for many, many years. And anyways, when I got involved with all that, I realized then, of course, these elephants were poached. They were not dying of old age, as I was told previously. So I thought that, since these animals had died of old age, it would be okay to use their tusks. But obviously, I learned differently, and made me very angry, of course. So which kind of helped put me on the path of trying to make a change, a positive change, and changing the wrong that I'd actually done, I believe, because I was helping with the ivory trade at the time without realizing it. In fact, there were sculptors in China that I had helped with certain bits of training. So anyways, that was part of the background.
Wow. Amazing.
Here we are using you in front cover of Hong Kong Tatler.
Okay, pardon, I wasn't being scatterbrained just now, but then there was someone trying to garden next to me. Oh. There were cats jumping around and trying to catch a bird, so I kind of lost my train of thought earlier.
No, you're all right.
Yeah, okay. So now we're back properly. So Hong Kong Tatler, I did this cover story for them one year with one of my chameleons, and so this kind of illustrates, I guess, my earliest efforts at conservation. I would have been in my early 20s when I started with chameleon conservation. I met a couple of people whom I found extremely interesting, and they were based in California. And we got together and scraped up some money, and we went and collected chameleons. Wow. Now, the reason for this, of course, I know you guys understand what it's like when you're passionate about something and you just don't think about making money or being sustainable financially or any of that. So that's where I was then. Our goal was to try to bring chameleons into the pet trade. And this was in early 90s. And the reason was because we went to certain parts where they're from, throughout Africa, Tanzania, all the way to Madagascar. And you could be standing at the top of a hill where you're actually in the jungle, trees everywhere, and you'd be able to find chameleon eggs. But say a year later, go back to the same exact spot, you do a 360 turn, and you won't see a single tree. So that's what we were looking at. Complete habitat loss. It could be because of palm oil, whatever it may be, it's human encroachment. So at the time we were thinking, well, these animals are going to disappear. So let's do a Noah's Ark sort of thing, try to bring them into homes, see if we can save them that way. We succeeded in breeding 38 species of chameleons. We're the largest breeders in the world. I think we brought in most of the pet chameleons that are available today. We do not encourage people taking from the wild unless your researchers are doing that kind of work, because wild-caught animals do not usually do well in captivity. They can harm themselves. There's a high mortality rate. They have a lot of parasites. They don't like you. They want to be in the wild. So anyways, we worked on the chameleon issue. That was my first thing. So in time, I did my movies, did my work, and I was approached by some friends in California, and they said that they were trying to get the state to ban shark fin trade. Now, Hawaii was at the same time doing this. And so they were looking for Asian-faced artists that could step up to the plate and help with promoting this. And of course, I said, sure thing. Flew over to San Francisco, got involved, spoke out several times in Sacramento and State Assembly. We got the job done in California. It was not easy. In California, it was quite very difficult because frankly, as Michael would remember, when we were in that sort of shark fin storage facility, that secret place in Hong Kong, we saw, yes, that's where we were. That's Michael's photo. So these bags, okay, which we were not supposed to see, mind you, these bags showed where these fins came from. Okay, now we were in a freezer, and this freezer was where they kept the most expensive fins, and I'm holding actually a great white fin. That looked like a great white pectoral fin, but nevertheless, you can tell it's a great white. And on the bags, you'd see Mexico, Costa Rica, you would spot the trail where these things came from. And certain places where they say, like Izamihiris, Cancun, where they say that shark fin is no longer being traded, well, the stuff was still there. So we were able to find the trail. So learning about the trade in order to help stop it, working with a lot of people, that was the answer. And ultimately, of course, what it takes for anything to work, really, is education of the masses. If the public agrees with you, then you've got it made. So for me, it's been a long journey. And life is a journey, everyone says that. But for me, this conservation issue has been an amazing journey that I really, thank God for, because I'm passionate about it. I love it. And this particular picture was taken in Islamic. And we were able, my group and I, we were able to hang out with roughly nearly 600 whale sharks that time over a period of about 2 weeks. I learned about them. They, like people, different sharks have different temperaments. There were the ones that would play with you. I had one who swam under me and then lifted me up on top of its head and kind of rolled me around and thought I was a toy. And it was just the most amazing experience. But then, of course, there were the other ones that, they'd eat too much and they just float there and you could just swim over and take pictures with them. One should never purposefully touch a whale shark, though. It's okay if they touch you, but you shouldn't be touching them. There are a lot of people that love nature, but they love it so much and they're so uneducated about it that they're loving it to death. People who are picking up animals, pulling dolphins out of the ocean, riding whale sharks and hurting them. Again, it's not like they're doing it because they want to hurt these animals. They don't know. So I think it's our job as people who know a little bit better to help educate. So other than how to respect nature when you're in it, changing cultural mindsets in order to help protect biodiversity is something that I think I'm able to do. Years ago, when our mutual friend, Dr. Sylvia Earle, invited me to join her board of Mission Blue, my jaw kind of dropped at the time because I was quite new to all this. And I looked at her and I said, Sylvia, you must be kidding. I'm just some actress from Hong Kong. What do you think I can do? And you guys, you create submarines on your spare time. You guys are amazing scientists and researchers. What do you think I can do? And she inspired, encouraged me in the best possible way. She said that each and every one of us could and should find our own path to help. Conservation in this day and age doesn't just mean, for example, Sir David Attenborough out there making films, or people out on the field doing the research, or you guys, bringing back amazing footage. It's not just that, although that plays an extremely vital role in education. It also takes a lot of education at, how should I put it, with housewives, with households. So creating, say, TV series or news that would target, say, mass media. It could be, for example, it could be rather than regular news media pages, it could be entertainment page. I use a lot of fellow celebrities to help raise awareness. So that kind of thing actually ends up reaching households extremely well. And as Sylvia said to me, this day and age, it's very important to be able to reach the masses. My upcoming, hopefully as soon as possible, goal would be to be able to work with mainland China and to use that platform to help affect change within that population, because it's just massive. And the way I see China changing, the rate of growth is just astounding. Once they know that something's wrong, the consumers anyway, you see change very quickly. And, with demand, then of course, everything else changes. So anyways, the picture, what I'm holding there, that's a manta ray gill raker. It's used traditionally in Chinese medicine. Us divers who've met manta rays, it's a very zen experience. They are amazing, magnificent creatures that take a long time to mature, a long time to reach sexual maturity. They do not have a lot of babies. And of course, at the rate that we're decimating their populations for this that I'm holding, it's sacrilegious. It'll take a long time for them to recover. And manta's actually worth a lot more in tourism dollars. But right now, I think for countries that have manta rays in great numbers, the biggest issue would be policing, because the seafood trade, people that deal in that, they're very good at what they do. So we just need to work together.
Sharon, is this I remember I grew up in Singapore, and so I spent some time in Hong Kong in my early days. I do remember mantis gills being an in thing for Chinese cuisine. I mean, when did it actually start?
Manta ray gill rakers, they say, okay, this is their favorite sales pitch. You ask them something, they'll always say it's an ancient Chinese recipe. It could be the worst of BS, but still that's what they will say. I could not find exactly when it began, but I would dare say it's not really that old, okay? Maybe late Chang Dynasty, 100, 200 years from what I've been able to research. It's not actually cuisine per se. It's only been used for traditional Chinese medicine, but as a food. So right. How they use it, I've been told that it helps with kids that have allergies, or people that has allergies. If you've got skin allergies, it's supposed to help you get rid of it. And as long as you get them to eat this stuff, it's supposed to work. Now, how you get a kid to eat this, it's hard and icky, right? So they boil it and they mix it into like a rice porridge, and they flavor it with, say, salt or whatever other flavorings to make it more palatable. So, but the funniest thing, and I kid you not, on the same street, Michael, that I took you, one of the shops that I went in to research these gill rakers, there was a girl that worked there. Her parents owned the shop, her grandparents founded the shop, so these are mom and pop shops. And she was telling me how when she was young, her mother would make this porridge for her and she'd eat it. And she had skin allergies and how it healed. But honestly, she still had very obvious skin allergies all along her arm, on her neck. So,
oh man.
It worked.
You're like, I hate to break it to you, but I think it's not working.
She didn't really need a mirror. It was right there. So it doesn't really work. Now this photo, I was just beginning the descent to 300 meters. It was my first time in a submersible in Cocos Island. It was awesome. Words fail to describe. I do understand, though, after that first trip in a submersible, why people have a passion for very deep sea, because I think there's just so much that we haven't yet explored. It's a fact, though. You look at the math, there's just so much more ocean that we have not explored, and we're still using it as a garbage dump. So we could be destroying a lot that's either just precious or could actually be very helpful to us human beings, medically or otherwise. So, this was eye-opening to me, but I strongly urge people to, if they can, try to get yourself into the deep, deep sea.
It's like going to the moon, and only this part of the moon has got fish.
Better than the moon. It's got to be better than the moon. Because if you're on the moon, of course, astronaut friends would argue with us, but on the moon, you're not expecting to spot life. You're in the ocean, you're spotting stuff that you're wondering if anyone else had ever seen before. Yeah. So this picture, we're at the Explorers Club. Michael and Alex,
there, yep.
One of our hangouts. Yep. We go there every year, and I'm wearing still my one and only leather jacket, which I allow myself to still own. It's my club jacket. Yeah, I used to have fur coats, but now I look at a fur coat and I'm counting the number of animals needed to make one.
Yeah,
So,
perspective changes.
Yeah, that's Walter Monk, who left us a couple of years ago, and he's wearing these scarves that I made, and I think I gave you guys these scarves too. So they're actually a very practical scarf, as we like. They're not silk, they're not prissy. They're made of material that you could use to clean your eyeglasses and camera lens. Most importantly, scarves. And if you open them up, you'll see these are. I actually use Photoshop to patch together a lot of underwater photos, which I took to create the graphics for the scarf itself.
And now I think you should indulge in making a mask with your picture. I think mask will be a thing that we're going to part of our attire for the next couple of years.
That is a thought. I think so. You know, Michael, I'm really hoping that this blows over soon enough, and if it does, then the masks I make would kind of be obsolete. I don't know. Maybe I can make a mask that's shaped like a humphead wrasse lip. Or shark teeth.
That would be great.
Very kissable, for sure.
Our little triggerfish mouth.
Yes.
Oh gosh, yes.
I want to play a short video here.
Okay.
海豐環保教育基金國際大象犀牛聯盟總監龐國秀雲女士。多謝主席，各位香港嘅同胞，各位香港朋友你好。大象係好聰明而又富有感情嘅動物。當佢哋知道其他動物或者人類有危險嘅時候，佢哋都識得去施以援手。睇住佢哋嘅數字急劇下降，唔通我哋真係要袖手旁觀？我哋中國人懂得話有報應。今日我講嘅唔係迷信，呢個報應係真嘅。事實好多科學家都證明，地球失去生物多樣性，生物鏈就會產生連鎖嘅反應，影響其他地球生命嘅存亡。報應好快就會嚟到我哋人類身上。販賣象牙嘅犯罪集團，往往仲會牽涉販毒、走私軍火同埋販賣人口，而走私象牙就係佢哋其中一個令佢哋賺最大嘅錢嘅項目。大家好。
All right, Sharon, you want to tell us what do you say over there?
Yeah, that previous video, we stopped this one for a second while I'm puckering at everyone. That was me in Lechco in Hong Kong, and I was trying to get Hong Kong to effect an Ivory ban. So we ended up winning, but they gave quite a grace period for this to happen. Now, again, I'm seeing how businesses work, and it disgusts me. How to illustrate the mentality in a very succinct way. I remember years ago when I was in a fishing port in Kaohsiung in Taiwan. There was a tuna festival which goes on every year, and I was there having lunch with my husband and his business associates, one of which was a Taiwan fellow. And again, that was Tuna Fest, so everyone was having tuna. So I was, again, trying to explain why we shouldn't be eating too much tuna and why we really must try to avoid, for example, bluefin, so on and so forth. I did go and research that fish market too, and I did see them reel in quite a few bluefin early in the morning. In fact, that fish market is massive. It starts at about midnight and ends at about 8 a.m. So, but at the restaurant, I spoke with this guy, tried to explain, and his reaction was classic. His reaction was, "Oh, so we're gonna run out of tuna soon? My God, everybody, let's eat as much as we can while they're here."
Oh, jeez.
Because we're gonna run out of them. Let's enjoy it while we can. So that's what's wrong with that mentality. There's ignorance, there's selfishness, there's self-centeredness, and the whole thing is detrimental, of course, to biodiversity. Of course, there are many thoughts on that. Some scientists say that, okay, certain species will disappear, but Earth has been going through this sort of thing and things will rejuggle and we'll be fine. But see, that's the key. Will we be fine? In protecting current biodiversity as we know it, are we not actually protecting our own future? Plus, of course, you know, this all these wonderful, beautiful species, we're protecting it for our future generations. And if indeed reincarnation was true, I certainly wouldn't want to come back to a future that didn't have the animals that we have today.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a tough thing to change too. You know, I can't, hard to imagine where you would start with trying to alter a mindset like that.
Yeah. So this was, I was doing a Facebook Live thing, I think, in this video. I was just out on a little boat checking out one of Hong Kong's outlying islands, and I went to this particular little rocky beach. And if you can just kind of fast forward this video a bit to turn around to the other side, if it shows anything. There you go. There you go. Perfect. See that garbage?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was there for. I wanted to show people the garbage. That's a rooftop.
Yeah.
There is a rooftop there in the middle of nowhere. There's a ball, there's a volleyball, there's Wilson. That volleyball over there. And I saw a refrigerator. There's one time I was diving near Nine Pins in Hong Kong. I would have been at about 30-something meters deep. There was a shopping cart. I was in the middle of nowhere. If I surfaced, I could see no land. I was in the middle of nowhere, but there was a shopping cart at about between 40 and 30 meters deep. So one wonders, how the hell did it get there and why? Now, this is our trash. Everybody is responsible for it. If someone goes into your home and they throw garbage in your home or they defecate on your floor, I mean, something like that, what would you do? You would clean it up. So it really doesn't matter who put the garbage there or how it got there. We need to do our best to clean it up. So I took a few things with me that day. I certainly couldn't do the whole thing, but hopefully by exposing what's going on, the Hong Kong government would work harder, groups would work harder at beach cleanups. Now we've moved towards another video with my son standing there. He was standing in for me. He's also an actor in Hong Kong now, but at that time, I was actually in Texas at EarthX with Sylvia and John Hankey. So he was hosting that beach cleanup for me. Now, as you can see on his phone, he was playing Pokemon Go.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yes. Now, we were doing a Pokemon Go beach cleanup. So what people did was I liaised with a few shops in Hong Kong. There were prizes, Pokemon-related prizes. They could be stuffed dolls or battery packs, anything related to the game. Oh, and you see the guy behind my son. He was dressed as the Pokemon trainer Ash.
Yes.
Yeah, but so people would take pictures, and a lot of adults and kids playing. People would take pictures of all the trash that they pick up using AI with the Pokemons in their deck. So they would send these pictures in, and if chosen, we had like a panel of a couple dozen people to pick the winners. They would get prizes. So it was wonderful. We had a lot of people attending.
That's great.
And that's John and Sylvia and I. We were planning this at that stage with Lapras in the middle.
So cute. Love
There's a
that.
Pikachu on our lap. Yeah. So now this is another picture in Hong Kong. As you can see, there's a dead cetacean on the floor in front of me. I get calls. My phone number is not a secret. I'm quite open with disclosing my number. I don't get too many crank calls. Thank you very much. But people call me if they find that a cow has somehow walked off a cliff and is still alive and needs help. If there's some sea creature somewhere, whatever, I get calls. Dead mongoose on the road with babies on the side, I get calls. So someone called me about this carcass on the beach, and I headed out. And as you can see, it's a female. You can tell that it's got the milk ducts next to its vent at the bottom there. The tail fluke had been chewed by wild dogs. We have a number of wild dogs in Hong Kong's outlying islands, which is a problem that we actually need to address. Now, Finniss porpoises are endangered. This one, I opened up its mouth afterwards to have a look, and there was blood. So the body had been taken in by the Hong Kong AFCD, Agriculture and Fisheries and Conservation Department, and taken into laboratory at Ocean Park for autopsy. And she did die of blunt trauma. So basically she was hit by a boat. And somehow she was washed ashore or dragged ashore, or her mother tried to keep her afloat. It was a very young, possibly newborn finless porpoise. And of course, this is very sad to all of us. What the Hong Kong government needs to address about that is trying to, now I'm working in Hong Kong also on this matter. We've created Asia's first, well, not Asia, but Hong Kong. Okay, Hong Kong and China's first hope spot is now in Hong Kong already.
Right.
I need to get the government to work with me and play ball. So this is located in the southern tip of Hong Kong on Llama Island. So it takes up the south and southwest areas of the island and goes into some of the migratory paths of some species such as sailfish and so on that go from Australia to India and back and forth every year. There's a lot of traffic there, boat traffic, and there's still a lot of fishing, illegal and or otherwise. So now that we've managed to get the government to agree to more marine protected areas here, we need to somehow get the government to step up on policing and creating steeper fines, because now there's hardly any slaps on the wrist and it's not much of a deterrent. So we've got friends, just a few of us, who are out there policing on our own little tiny boats and crafts. And when we see something wrong, we call it in. But by the time the authorities arrive, they would have gone. They go back across the border, which is, it's on the ocean, but they just go back across to China, and they're then out of our jurisdiction, and there's nothing we can do about it. So now this is definitely one of my favorite.
Is this in Palau?
Deep sea fish, yes.
Blue corner.
The corner.
Yes, yes, you know this.
I got it. I know this fish.
And I've got my pin on.
Really?
My dears, I have news for you. This fish is now gone.
I know, I heard.
Yes.
Yeah, so another couple of the females are growing up to take its place as the male, but this particular fish had been taken. Again, it's money. So I met with, now as we all do, we go to Palau, we hang out there, we meet with Palau's people. They're lovely, they're wonderful, they're warm. You meet with the president, his wife, and you talk about issues, and they want to get things done. They certainly really do. But they're not the only ones in charge. So the politics of Palau is very unique, and it's not very helpful at times with the preservation of certain species. Money talks. There are a lot of people who want to pour money into parts of Palau, and Palau is small enough already. They want to build casinos, which will probably last for just a few years, which we know what the story is. It's all about money laundering.
Yeah.
And but of course, once that happens, we'll start seeing crime in Palau. Nowadays, there isn't any crime. No one locks their doors. Your kids run over to next door neighbors and they'll feed them and send them back. It's a great sort of place. But once you have casinos going, bad things start happening. Of course, there are also people in Palau that own some properties, resorts and so on, and they have a lot of money. They're able to pay whatever amounts, and they just order for their annual Chinese New Year banquet or whatnot, the most extravagant things that they could think of, which is where this fish ended up. We were unable to exactly pinpoint when or whom took this fish in without enough evidence, but photos that have circulated allowed us to recognize that it was this fish because their patterns on their face are unique. A photo with a man that was doing the chopping up of the fish. He stood the fish's head, stood the head up and stood next to it, leaning his body against it. He blurred his face so no one would recognize it. And there's newspaper all over the floor, a lot of blood, and you could read Chinese on the newspapers. So that's all the evidence that we saw. And the timestamp was around Chinese New Year, when several of these larger wrasses disappeared in Palau. And as you know, there really aren't that many of the breeding males. So this sets back the whole species in Palau for a bit of time. Okay, we jumped to this albino turtle that I'm holding. I was in a turtle facility in Cancun, and this is my dream of something to happen in Hong Kong. I've been dreaming of it for over a dozen years, and way before China started getting into conservation. Now China's already doing it. Hong Kong's far behind, and I'm still unable to get this show off the road because Hong Kong's land is scarce, there's funding, there's sponsorship, there's all kinds of stuff I'm unable to work on yet. But what this place does is they work with the community, they work with the locals. See, the people in Mexico have had a history of eating turtle and turtle eggs. Well, so do the Chinese. But sea turtles actually, for Mexico, they mean a lot in tourism dollars. So they do want to maintain the species there. So they've managed to turn things around by working with the community. So one evening I went out with a grandfather and his granddaughter at night, and we searched the beaches for egg-laying females. And once we spotted one, now we spotted one earlier that hadn't started laying eggs, and you had no idea, I had no idea, that turtles can actually run so fast. I mean, that female fled back into the ocean like she had wings on her. I was shocked, you know, so wow, they could move. But then we found one that had already dug her hole, and she was in the middle of laying eggs. And when they do that, they're not going to move. So we went down there and we tried not to disturb her. I filmed her without using lights, so I couldn't disturb her. And I filmed her, and we took all her eggs, put them in a bucket carefully. And the next morning, well, actually about 4 or 5 in the morning, we went to the facility that was owned by the government. And the government actually paid the locals some money for doing this work, which is strong incentive and a wonderful pat on the back. And what the government did was then they put these eggs, they used some kind of material to create an enclosure per batch of eggs. And then all of these eggs were in a much larger fenced-in area. And each batch had like a large sign on it saying what species, what date, and when, number of eggs, and so on and so forth. So the statistics is out of around 8,000 hatchlings, you'd get one albino or Lutino, and they usually have a problem. If they hatched in the wild, they'd swim out, and because they're white or nearly white, predators would spot them almost immediately. They're not going to make it to adulthood.
Right.
The ones that survive, they don't set them free. They keep them in the facility because they know they'll die anyways. They have problems. It's like their internal radar doesn't really work. They swim around in circles, they swim erratically, but they're able to survive within a man-made sort of environment. Now, what these facilities do, though, is I supplied actually a supplement because we created a supplement when we were breeding chameleons, and they also work with parrots and other reptiles. So we supply the supplement to these facilities for free, which they mix into their foods. And it's very high in calcium. And it helps these animals grow a lot faster and healthier as long as they've got enough sun. So once they reach a certain size, a little bit smaller than what I'm holding, they would then invite officials, you know, the community, kids, elders, whatever. They would create a free the turtle sort of party. And they would then set these turtles free. And people would feel a connection, a deep connection to these animals when they themselves set them free. So I want this for Hong Kong desperately. And hopefully it's something I'll get done while I'm still alive.
Things take a while, that's for sure.
Yes, it does. Now this picture, I'm in States Assembly in California. And I think that was when I was pushing for the Ivory ban in California. So again, you know, when you're pushing for this sort of thing, it's a global thing. Trade is global. It's not just limited to a certain place. Although you can say that, oh, you know, most buyers are in China or in Asia. Yes and no. If you look at the size of the population, then of course you'll have more buyers in China, because just, my goodness, the number of people in China.
Right.
But looking at animals species by species, for example, rhino horn, the greatest demand is still in Vietnam. And again, it's not even used really as TCM. It's used mostly as bribe gifts. These are gifts that people, you know, they're not allowed to really give chunks of cash, or they think chunks of cash may be slightly taggier, so they do the next taggiest thing, which is buying something extremely useless and expensive to gift to officials to get them to do what they want, sort of thing. So rhino horn is one of those things. And of course, you know, people have told stories of rhino horn being able to cure just about anything, along with working better than, say, Viagra. It doesn't do that, as far as I know. I've asked traditional Chinese medicine practitioners how this stuff works, because I do want to learn and I want to hear both sides of the story. And with rhino horn, apparently I'm told it works as a catalyst. It in itself isn't an ingredient that causes any change, but it acts as a catalyst in certain recipes to make those ingredients take effect, which is very strange. However, you don't really need to use rhino horn. You can substitute it by using even ox horn. You just need to use a lot more. So it's about money, you know, when there's a trade, when there's people saying something is worth so much, then it jacks up the price and is a vicious cycle. People will want to buy it more because then it becomes a much worthier bribe gift or something to own, because they think that it's worth a lot of money and they can hold on to it because it's worth a lot of money. Now this picture was taken in the States, in Colorado, where we had a deposit. It was a mind-blowing place for me. Of course, it makes sense being in Colorado because it's high up and it's dry. So that's where they kept a deposit of a lot of the confiscated goods that comes into the U.S. These are confiscated wildlife parts. So when I went into this building, it was like, you know, Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they finally put the Ark. It was like that. It was mind-boggling. And they would have aisles and aisles and aisles of various things. So if you wanted to look up elephant-related things, you'd go into that room. Rhino would be that aisle. Traditional Chinese medicine would be another aisle. And, you know, about Chinese and this thing about virility, it's as if they've never heard of proper exercise and diet, right? I mean, there were a few rows of, and pardon me, but this is just fact, okay? There were a few rows of various penises from different animals, from seals to large cats to giraffes, tigers. It was a whale. It was just mind-boggling. I hesitate to imagine why anyone would even want to eat that, but it's all dried up and gross looking, but that's traditional Chinese medicine. What it is these people being able to create a really good sales pitch, and people then being able to believe it. A lot of the buyer's mentality would be, hey, if it's worth so much and people are willing to pay so much to buy it, that means it really works. So that's how it starts. Very quickly, I know of one ingredient which is a very new ingredient to the scene, but again, they use a sales pitch of it being an ancient rediscovered recipe. They call them porcupine dates. These are stomach stones. They are created with, these have to come from adult creatures that have lived a certain lifetime, because these are the bits of food that they couldn't digest. Becomes compacted, turns into little round things in their stomachs. And you need to kill these animals to get these stones, and they don't all have them. Most of them don't. So now at this moment, most porcupine species are not endangered yet. Some are. But this fad, this craze, started most likely in Indonesia or Malaysia, and it moved on to Singapore and China. And when you're looking at the cost of, say, a car, a decent car for a tiny little lump that's that size, and they're saying that it cures cancer, it cures this, it cures that. Well, I'll tell you what, I had a friend of mine who's an actress. She had cancer. Someone gave her 2 of these things, which she ate. She's no longer with us. She passed away 2 years ago. Doesn't work. So they're sales pitches. And it's as if people try to think up what next thing they can use to make a buck, whether it's real or not. But as long as it doesn't kill people and they make their money, I guess sometimes even if it does kill people, they probably don't even care as long as they make their money. So that's how it is. Now for me, what you've got on the screen right now, you've got one picture of me in the room where they put all the ivory that was in America, that was in Colorado, and all this stuff was crushed by the end of the day when I was there. We had a huge ceremony. They had this crushing machine, several of them, and everything was ground down. But as you can see behind me, there was a huge glass box of trinkets that people brought into the States, either wearing it or whatever. These were confiscated. For, I guess, first-time offenders, they would have their stuff confiscated and they wouldn't receive a fine, I think. No. But for repeat offenders, well, you should know better. There's jail sentences, there's fines, and of course, if you're found smuggling, then it's a bigger issue. I think U.S. has much stricter rules than China. Again, for me, it has been an extreme journey with elephants because when I was little, I believed that they died of old age. There are elephant graveyards that they go to and they die. This started in the 1400s. When people were seafaring, starting to really seafare, and they brought ivory to Europe from Africa, which is why we call piano keys ebony and ivory. They used real ivory. So they found tusks in elephant graveyards, and I believed that that was the case when I was younger. And then I found out that whole families, whole herds were being completely wiped out, even down to the most elusive pygmy elephants. They were being wiped out for their tiny little tusks, all because of money and people not having the proper education. So for me, I'm working on the education side of it. This picture shows me in between of 2 Ians. So the one Ian with the elephant on his shoulder is Ian Douglas Hamilton. He's based in Africa. He works with elephants, obviously, sanctuaries, and they deal with a lot of orphan elephants that they're found usually after their herds are completely wiped out because of the ivory trade. Sometimes these people don't bother with killing the very young because they have no tusks to speak of. They're very young, and they don't want to waste a bullet. So they just leave them to starve in the wild. And they get brought into these sanctuaries. And for as long as they live, they'll have nightmares because elephants have extremely long memories. They are very unique creatures that we're still learning a lot of. There have been cases at Ian's place, so Ian Douglas Hamilton's place, where they've had some orphans which they've raised and then released back into the wild. They do come back every so often for a snack or whatever to visit. And one day they brought with them several, I believe there were 3 injured bull elephants. And they were completely wild. And African elephants are huge. They're quite dangerous, but they were injured. They had poison arrow tips in them. So they were able to tranquilize them, operate on them, and remove these tips and save these wild animals that came in. But imagine that these orphans were able to communicate with these wild animals to bring them to these humans that were helpful and would be able to save them. It's just amazing. Now, the other Ian in the picture, of course, is also a conservationist. He's Ian Redmond, good friend of mine. He also deals with elephants. He was actually run over by a female a year ago, ended up in the hospital. Not her fault. He was in the way. But he started working really mainly with great apes, with Diane Fossey. So he's a great ape and elephant person based in England. Now, this picture, I'm not holding cute and cuddly fake fur. I was in an African muti market. Muti kind of means magic medicine. So it's their equivalent to traditional Chinese medicine. They strongly believe in this stuff. So Chinese are not the only people decimating wildlife. The Africans are very good at it as well, and they have a whole string of recipes, various recipes for different wildlife. These, of course, pelts are there for people to buy and use. A lot of the locals, the men, still wear these pelts as part of their costumes. Foreigners, of course, should know better, because if they buy these and they try to get through customs with it in most countries, they're going to be in deep trouble, because these are CITES Appendix 1, endangered species. I'm holding a lion. You see leopard behind me, cheetah, and there were more different, there's zebras and all kinds of skins there. I was also able to find a lot of pangolin scales and just all sorts of weird knickknacks there. It was a little bit scary because the locals were not extremely friendly. Some other people, actually some reporters, had been there the day before, and they filmed a lot of stuff and exposed it online on social media in a very negative way. So they were not happy with us. It was quite dangerous. Wow. So education is a very important thing. The African people also eat a lot of pangolins. So they have recipes for the claws, the feet, the head, the ears, the tongue. And apparently only their quote-unquote royal members or VIP people in their tribes were able to partake of this sacred animal. I guess you could call it sacred, but they do appreciate pangolins. I was involved in a bust in Sumatra, which is where I took the pictures with these Sumatran pangolins. It was a extremely heartbreaking thing that I'll never forget. I don't want to call it an event. It lasted for a few days, and it was just heartbreaking. There were thousands of carcasses, thousands, in a facility that they said was for seafood. So there were a lot of refrigerators there for the carcasses. There were live animals. There were nearly 200 live animals when I showed up. I was not actually in a proper position to be authorized to do a whole lot. But I got there and I saw these animals, and nobody was doing anything for them. They had been without water for nearly a week. There were carcasses in cages. It's like these people were completely desensitized to these beings in cages. There was a lactating mother with a baby, and you saw me holding the baby in that picture. So in the end, we set free all of these that were still living in a extremely not ideal environment. Probably a few would have survived, but there wasn't anything better we could do.
Right.
The carcasses, well, a huge hole was dug and they were all burned along with the scales. We have pictures of that. This young one I'm holding, look at its eyes. It's terrified, but it's young enough not to be scared of me. I took a picture with it and then I set it free. But if you understand the species, you don't set them free all at once in great numbers in one location. They're territorial.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was very concerned also with, because we were working with some locals to set these free. And these locals had dogs with them. And frankly, these pangolins were like walking money. Each one being worth maybe roughly $2,000 US.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I have a feeling that a lot of them would have been taken back once we left by some of the locals.
Yeah.
So anyways, so the next picture, I guess it just kind of illustrates a bit of what I do on my spare time. I still promote, you know, responsible pet care if you can. Adopt a dog rather than buying one from a pet shop. I used to have show dogs in my youth when I was more fond of brand names. Now I still am. Ocean Geographic.
Yay! Just
Right.
different kinds of brands.
Yes. So people kind of, grow and hopefully learn wisdom in different
That is
ways.
definitely an Ocean Geographic dog with an orange jacket on it.
Oh yes. So this is my dog. His name is Ugly. He's still with me. He's probably a Pekingese Jack Russell cross. And as you can see, those teeth, that's why I named him Ugly. But everyone loves Ugly. He's friends with the whole neighborhood. If a robber showed up, he'd invite them in and show them where the goods are. But he's a sweetheart, and he's been with me for about 15 years. He'd be 18 now.
Wow.
So I rescued him from an abusive environment, and he just had a massive operation. He's fine. He's up and running. So a lot of the times these mixed breeds are actually a lot healthier. And he's a very good dog. He's very obedient. Tegus, on the other hand, now, those are Tegus I'm holding in the other picture. They're in the pet trade, and I strongly encourage people to have pets, especially in a city like Hong Kong or New York or even Singapore, you know, whatever legally you're allowed to keep, as long as they're captive bred, especially if you have kids. I believe that pets play a very important role in society, because unless people have some kind of connection with other living things, they're completely disconnected with nature. And it's very hard to teach a child, and then a youth, and then an adult, to feel empathy and feel that they're part of nature, and to protect and preserve nature, unless they feel that they're a part of it.
Yeah.
So, that's me all dolled up. I clean up decent, I guess. And I'm holding my certificate of induction into the Women Divers Hall of Fame. I think I was, and still probably am, the only one from Asia.
I believe so.
And but I changed that for the Explorers Club. I think I've dragged in a few other girls from Asia to join the Explorers Club. So it's all good. We're all weird and wonderful people. And together we're no longer weird anymore, because there's that many of us.
Exactly.
That's right. I like that.
Now, here's one last picture of you before we get into Q&A time.
Okay, that's the martial arts side of me, and there's a lot of culture in that. That head is not what you'd normally see in lion dancing. It's a unicorn, we call it. We call it a kirin, chilin, or kelon. It's quite unique to Hong Kong and Hong Kong's fishing people. It's again, it's a two-person sort of prop that we use, but it's handled very differently from the lion heads that you see normally. When I do martial arts, my favorite thing is to do lion dancing, because I feel like I'm pretending to be a lion. I'm trying to act out its liveliness, playfulness, and I just enjoy doing it very much. Sometimes we have competitions. I used to do the competing when I was a lot younger. I'm not quite there anymore, because you actually jump up onto these very high poles, and it gets a bit dangerous. Not that I mind that, but I'm just not that young anymore. I was doing some gardening out here a few days ago, and I shot my back. So
oh no! Oh, good.
Yeah. Okay. So that's it.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing so much.
Thank you for that. It's very inspiring, and I know we learned a lot in what you do. And basically boil down to us being very disconnected with nature, and we should encourage, somehow or rather, better connection of nature, especially what we're going through right now due to habitat loss. And
well, nature is thriving now.
Yeah.
With us all indoors. Jellyfish in Venice.
It's getting a nice break. Nature's getting a good break.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what we're gonna do is that I'd like to just check for question while
that's what I'm looking right now.
Sharon for a bit.
Sure.
Sharon, I'm not sure you know that the theme for World Ocean Day in China, you'll be talking about healthy ocean, healthy people, but it's also about the Arctic. As last count, there was probably about 250 NGO for protection of rhino and elephants, but for polar bear, there's none. And in terms of animal loss, of species loss, for the last 8-10 years, we lose about 1,000 polar bear a year. And largely of that, I would say 80% of that is due to commercial and hunting.
Their
and
pelts are
hunting,
still in demand.
And mainly for the furs that is being exported to China. In fact, 65-70% of the furs are being exported to China because the fur raised about between $24,000 to $60,000 per polar bear fur. And that's what Ole is about. He did a research for the last 4 years about the habitat and also the trophy huntings and commercial hunting, is to bring awareness to China that there's only about 23,000 to 25,000 polar bear left in the wild. If we lose about 1,000 bear each year, it won't be long. The only place to see a polar bear will be in a zoo. So we hope that you will join us in this initiative to bring greater awareness of polar bear in China through World Ocean Day.
With each, yes, of course, I'd be honored to, but with each and every species, we need to find the sales pitch that works with getting the point across to the consumers to stop the demand. So, with shark fin, and a lot of times, people are self-centered or selfish. You need to think what would make them stop. So with shark fin, of course, we tried going on about mercury levels in deep sea fish, the more aged fish and so on. With humped wrasse, my favorite is with humped wrasse, because my question to people would be, do you want to eat cyanide? Because you can't catch them with hooks. They're not going to bite, or at least they don't normally. You can't net them. They live in the reefs, so they use cyanide to poison great areas of reefs in order to catch humped wrasse and ship them immediately to restaurants throughout Asia, especially south of China. And they go for anywhere from $200 to $400 US a plate. So it's a show-off food. And a lot of people actually end up in hospitals getting their stomach pumps after eating it. But they just, it doesn't click. They don't think that it could come from a swimming fish, because the Chinese mentality is such that if it's swimming, it's alive, it's healthy. And I bought a healthy swimming creature and I ate it. I couldn't have gotten anything from it. So again, education is the key. With polar bears, I still haven't found the right sales pitch yet, because you've got people saying, oh, well, the ice is melting. So then, of course, they'll say, well, the species is disappearing anyways. And since they're disappearing anyways, might as well let me have a pelt. So it's hard, and we need to find the right key.
Yeah.
Correct. Alex, any questions or Sharon?
Nothing has popped up.
It's
I know it's a lot to think about, you know. No, nothing has popped up. Sharon, I have a question for you, mainly just because I don't, understand the perspective of a lot of this. In traditional Chinese medicine, the people who are actually selling this, do they actually believe in what they're selling, or do they just know that it's got to sell? Like, is it about selling, or do they really think it works? Or both?
For the people, okay, there's two schools of thought. There are researchers in laboratories and universities working on making traditional Chinese medicine real medicine as recognized by science. Now, if you think about it, all of our medicine that we're using, from penicillin, being from a type of bacteria, fungus growth, to everything is from nature.
Yes.
Bear bile, okay, that acid that we retrieve from bear bile, which helps us with kidney stones, that it does work, mind you. But if you take it directly from live bears, you don't know what dose you're taking.
No.
And, well, I mean, one bear could be healthier than the other. So 10 drops from mama bear doesn't equal 10 drops from papa bear. So, and of course, you're looking also at viruses that can transmit from wild animals and mutate. This does happen. And I can't, I've been saying this for years, but people just don't get it until today. Wow. It's aptly illustrated. So the people that are working on the science, they're trying to stick with traditional recipes and making it work scientifically. This also means being able to collect the ingredients and making sure that the dosage is correct. And it's very hard, because even if it's herbal, something that's collected during high tide or full moon may not be as strong as otherwise. So actually, if it's lab created, if you take the ingredient and then lab created, that's when it becomes fully trustworthy. And then where do you draw the line from it being Chinese traditional medicine to
pharmaceutical,
the other scientific stuff then, right?
Right,
So you're
definitely.
using the TCM, maybe you're using the TCM recipe.
Right.
But then you're taking ingredients that have been properly lab created. Now, bear bile, we've been able to lab create it since the 1940s.
Right.
There's absolutely no reason why we need to take it from bears, except when you're in mainland China, there's so much fake everything going on that people trust seeing something coming directly from an animal.
Interesting.
See, before we condemn societies and peoples for the way they think and the way they act, in what I do, I make myself watch the most horrific videos and information to keep abreast of what's going on.
Right.
And I see videos of like wet markets where dog and cats are being killed.
Yeah.
And you see people treating these animals like they would with chickens, and people, you still eat chicken if you're eating chicken, and an animal's an animal, right?
Correct.
But the way they're treating them, I mean, I saw this video where a woman just grabs a bunch of kittens and sticks them live into a steamer. And she grabbed the female, the mother cat, and just threw her into a boiling vat of water and closed the top. Now, the scariest part of all this, these animals, they're going to die shortly. So their pain is over. But the scariest part is these people doing it, they are completely desensitized. And they had their children, their toddlers walking around as this was going on. I saw a toddler in the background with nappies on, walking around. Now, if you or I grew up in that environment, would we be thinking as we do in this position today?
Doubtful.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're the sum of our education.
For sure.
So understanding why people act the way they do and think the way they do helps us understand how we could help affect change.
Yes. Yeah.
What's your take on this wet market situation? There's a lot of miscommunication going on with the current pandemic. What's your take on that?
It's one of the positive things that came out of this pandemic.
True.
Yeah.
People are finally waking up to the fact that yes, things can pop over from wild animals, although we're not 100% exactly when or how this virus happened. But if you look at recent history, there's mad cow, there's bird flu, H5N1, there's Ebola, there's swine flu. These all happen from all over the world. It's not something exclusive to China and wet markets, but it is exclusive to eating wild creatures or meat. So for people all over the world, you gotta wake up and look at how we're living our lives. People that eat meat, and I still do, limited. I haven't had beef in over 20 years, but limited meats and not every day. I eat more vegetables. It's a much healthier diet. It's healthier for yourself. It's healthier for the planet on a huge scale. But if you're eating meat, you have to learn about how your meat got to you. Don't think that, because it's a chicken or a cow or a pig, it's okay. Because if you look at some of the videos out there, it doesn't take much in this day and age to get yourself educated, especially if you're living in a place with good internet access. And these are not fake videos. You look at enough of them, you cannot fake stuff like that.
Nope.
The way that our farm animals are mostly treated for our consumption, these are time bombs waiting to create viruses that will hurt us.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Sharon. We took a lot of your time.
Thank you for having us on.
We look forward to seeing you on World Ocean Day with us again. So here we are, Sharon Kwok, activist, actress, and secret agent. Thank you.
We're convinced of it.
See you soon, guys.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sharon. Good to see you.
Thank you so much.